Attention all passengers. Do you want a front row seat for the future of air travel? The Skift Idea Awards are back, and the Airlines and Airports category is where innovation takes flight. From next-gen passenger experiences to bold sustainability moves, we're celebrating the ideas transforming the future of aviation. Airline Weekly Lounge listeners get 50% off their first entry with the code AW50FORYOU. That's AW50FORYOU. Head to live.skift.com to start your submission today. Hello and welcome to the Airline Weekly Lounge. I'm your host Gordon Smith and I'm joined as usual by co-host Jay Shabat. In part 1 of this week's show, we're reviewing Ryanair's latest results. And in part 2, we're discussing that huge order from Qatar Airways. Hi Jay, how's it going?
All right, very well. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you. I should really sense check my introduction scripts before, because that is not easy to say. Reviewing Ryanair's latest results. Too many R's there. I even tripped up on that effort. But yes, we're taking a look at the Irish low-cost giant in part 1. We call them an Irish low-cost giant, but they've got so many fingers and so many different pies now. Have you counted up all of the Ryanair Group's AOCs of an evening?
Well, let's see. AOCs is at 4 or 5 now. They've got the Irish one. They've got the UK one. They've got one in Poland. They've got one in Malta. Am I missing any?
Lauda Air,
that's right, in Austria. So is that 5?
Yeah, let's go for 5. So let's tell our listeners who may be listening to us in Europe or maybe listening to us from further afield, Jay, what do they need to know about Ryanair's latest financials?
Well, before I tell you, I want to share with you that I asked ChatGPT this morning to offer me some of the best and funniest all-time Michael O'Leary quotes. And I'm sure, Gordon, you have some of your own favorites. I have to say, well, I like this one. I like the one where he said, MBA students, they come out with, my staff is my most important asset. No, staff is your biggest cost. and he speaking, this might be probably my all-time favorite because I think it's simple and to the point. And by the way, I'm paraphrasing a little here. I, in some cases, had to, clean it up for the children. But this one is maybe my favorite. People would crawl naked over broken glass to get a €10 fare.
Maybe in my student days, and maybe not broken glass and maybe not naked, but with those caveats, the soundbite holds.
Very much. And transitioning into the latest Ryanair earnings, which were released on Monday. We're talking today on Tuesday. We're usually Monday recorders, but today we're doing Tuesday here. It's Tuesday morning, New York time anyway. And we're reviewing the Ryanair results from yesterday. That's their full year results, by the way, their full fiscal year, which runs a little bit off from the actual calendar year. Fiscal year ends in March. So what I'm going to talk today is mostly about the January to March quarter. Michael O'Leary and Ryanair are still doing as well as always. This is, remember, the one of the most profitable, perhaps the most profitable airline in the history of the world. Just incredible history of what they've accomplished there. Now, you wouldn't know it by their calendar first quarter results. They did have a negative 21% operating margin, which sounds really, really ugly. And it would be if you were in a normal quarter. But for them, remember, there wasn't any Easter this quarter. And it is just the first quarter is just super slow for European short haul. So negative 21%. It's something that you wouldn't even really shouldn't pay too much attention to. If you want to, the comparison's sake, they had negative 16% last year, and that was with Easter. So, it's all good. Much more important than that is O'Leary and company say that the summer is looking really good. And one reason for that is that supply remains constrained, including their own aircraft supply. So Boeing is getting better about delivering those 737 MAXs to them, but still not nearly as many as they'd like to have for this summer. There's that. They also said that there is some upward pressure on fares because of consolidation. And the example they gave is in Italy, how fares are kind of creeping upwards because of ITA, formerly Alitalia, now owned by Lufthansa. They also mentioned, O'Leary also mentioned, that they have new agreements with online travel agencies and some tour operators in place. So that's helping bookings this summer as well. And then interestingly, they talked a little bit about transatlantic demand. Now, remember, Ryanair has nothing to do directly with transatlantic travel. They don't fly to the US or Canada, for example, but they certainly get people, Americans, Canadians, who fly over to Europe in the summer, and then while within Europe, they fly around on Ryanair. So that is very much a demand source for them. Now, what they say is, as far as the Americans coming over, they say that here's a quote directly from O'Leary, we see no decline in the inbound transatlantic to Europe this year. All of the metrics we see, forward bookings into Spain, Italy, Greece, the islands this summer, they all look strong. So nothing there. They did mention that going the other way, which is less meaningful to Ryanair, but they did note that European travelers, well, I guess in this sense it is meaningful to Ryanair, because they did say that Europeans are likely to travel less to the U.S. because, quote unquote, U.S. is an unwelcome destination at the moment. And O'Leary said that could be, another quote here, translating maybe to a bit more holiday at home in Europe. So in other words, what he's trying to say is that Europeans may be foregoing trips to the U.S. this summer. Instead, they'll stay home, and if they're living in London, maybe they'll go to Italy this summer instead of New York, or they'll go to Greece instead of Florida, whatever. So that all adds up to a pretty benign picture as we look ahead to the summer. And as I've mentioned before, a lot of that stuff we're not just talking about speculation here. There's certainly some of that is based on conjecture, but some of it is based on real hard bookings that are already, placed. So we know Ryanair kind of knows already what it's going to get this summer, more or less, here we are already in late May. So I think, and very consistent with what other airlines have said about European travel this summer. So it's looking good. And then, of course, fuel prices are down too. So should be a good news story.
I was going to ask you about fuel, Jay. Was there any explicit mention to the relatively low fuel prices on Ryanair's performance?
Yeah, now they are heavily hedged, so they've locked in a lot of their fuel prices at higher fares than they would have gotten otherwise. But on the percentage, whatever it is, I can't remember offhand, maybe it's 20%, 30% of the fuel that they'll be purchasing that isn't hedged, they'll certainly save money on that. And then going out, they went out and locked in fuel at rather cheap prices for beyond the summer into their kind of next fiscal year. So that is definitely good news as well for Ryanair.
O'Leary suggested Brits, Europeans might not get the warmest of welcomes right now in America. I bet one place in America that he is guaranteed a warm welcome is Seattle, Jay, particularly at Boeing headquarters. Was there any colour from O'Leary and team about the current state of play with MAX deliveries and production?
Yeah, just as I mentioned, that things are getting better. There's still, for them, they've got these whatever they call them now, the 8200s, or that kind of tweaked version of the MAX 8 that has more seats for the low cost carriers. They have those, and they're coming in. As I said, slower than they'd like, but they seem to think Boeing is starting to get their act together. And now, of course, they have the MAX 10, which is the largest version of the MAX. They have a whole bunch of those on order, and they're waiting for that to get certified by the FAA. So that's really out of Boeing's direct control anyway. They, as of now, they hope that those will start arriving in 2027, I believe, maybe early 20 or late 26. But that will be a great aircraft when it comes. But that's, don't expect that anytime real soon because of the certification issues. They're, by the way, only growing seats this fiscal year, which started last month in April. They're only going to grow 3%, which is unusual for them. They typically grow a lot faster than that. And they are, remember, a much larger airline today than they were pre-COVID. So they've been, consistently growing throughout, the past half decade or so. So just 3% this year. And that will, I think, just to give you O'Leary's quote on that, he called it a quote unquote historically low rate of growth. And that's, helping pricing too, just by, the less supply that they're going to put out in the market. And I guess the one other interesting thing I could add about that, when you're slowing growth, it does allow them to be a little bit more discerning in terms of where they put that capacity. And one of the tenets of their very super successful business model is kind of playing off airports versus each other. And that may be a little bit of a crude way to put it. I mean, it's not like the Hunger Games or anything, but it may be something akin to that.
Hey, it's not far off.
It may be not far off. And we'll talk a little bit, if I may, afterwards about how they kind of do that similar strategy with their labor unions as well. But with airports, yeah, they'll say, hey, if Dublin, if you don't want to accommodate our growth, then okay, we'll grow in Rome this summer, and if Romania wants to give us a good deal, then we'll grow there this fall, and so that's that is an extra kind of benefit on the fare side to, or let's say negotiating side, to growing at a slower rate. They could be even more intense about negotiating with airports.
And just leveraging the fact, Jay, that aircraft are perhaps the most mobile of all industrial assets.
Yep.
We've got colleagues on the hotels team. When you build a hotel in Philadelphia or France or the Philippines, that hotel is going to be there. You're not going to fly it somewhere else. So without stating the obvious, just
mobile factories, as they call them.
That's a great term, far more eloquent than I was about to describe it as. I just want to give a shameless plug for the Airline Weekly product, because we had Michael O'Leary. I sat down with him at the end of March on the sidelines of the Airlines for Europe Summit, and it was a great about 30-minute conversation one-on-one with Michael O'Leary, and there was loads of colourful quotes, plenty of stuff that we weren't able to get into Skift and elsewhere. And here's just a little line here on Boeing from him. Quote, Stephanie Pope is doing an excellent job at the moment. She's there eating, sleeping, breathing the production in Seattle. Boeing that is, needs a couple of years of just doing boring, repetitive, deliverable, reliable stuff to stop, having these F-ups that they have to deal with. So that was O'Leary speaking in March, and your comments, Jay, from just yesterday, May 19th, shows that things seem to be going reasonably smoothly, certainly more than they have. But yeah, just to let you know that we do have these big CEO interviews in Airline Weekly, and we've got more in the pipeline. Can't say who's coming up next, but there were some very, very big names due to speak to us in the weeks and months ahead. So airlineweekly.com for all of your insights and interview needs. Anything to add, Jay, before we head into the break on Ryanair?
Yeah, I just I did have a few notes on their cost strategy. We'll go maybe more into them in this week's issue. I wanted to point out something that I think may be overlooked by some people, and it is a very interesting difference between low-cost carriers in the United States versus Europe. It's not something that I think everybody recognizes. The labor situation is so much different in Europe, in the U.S., and in many ways, it's so much more favorable to airlines. And if you look like Ryanair, just to give you, and I don't exactly know how they calculate these numbers, so take them for as they are, but they say that their unit cost, non-fuel unit cost, they can fly a passenger for 36 euros per passenger. Now they compare that to Southwest, 141 euros per passenger. And there are differences in various cost items. The Ryanair claims they have much lower maintenance costs, ownership costs, airport handling costs, etc. And one of the biggest differentials is in labor. So they say their non-fuel, or sorry, their labor unit costs are 9 euros, where Southwest are 81. And just remember that in the United States, the airline unions are much more powerful. Think about what Ryanair can do. They'll have, and they were really, Ryanair for many years didn't even recognize unions. I think there's some colorful quotes that O'Leary had to explaining why, but they only, I want to say within the past 10 years or so, started recognizing unions. But it's, let's say the Spanish pilot union and the Irish flight attendant union and the British pilot. So it's very fragmented. So you can see they can also do, we joked about the Hunger Games negotiations with the airports. They do a little bit about with the unions too, whereas like Southwest could never. And Ryanair gets away with things, and European airlines in general, even like the Lufthansa. Think about what Lufthansa is able to do with, we're opening up a new AOC. When I say AOC, the Air Operating Certificate, we're opening up a whole new, airline certificate that's going to have lower pilot costs with a completely different pilot contract. And Ryanair does this. We mentioned they have 4 or 5 different AOCs. You cannot do that. You can even think about doing that in the U.S. Just the way the labor dynamics work. So a lot more flexibility in Europe. Ryanair can outsource a lot more too. They even, not only are they outsourcing just pretty much like all their airport costs, their ground costs, but even in the air, their crew costs, they're going to hire from, pilot staffing agencies in the summer when they need, that extra labor supply during peak season. And they'll do the same thing with flight attendants. Again, that's just not something you see in the U.S. There's a lot of other really interesting aspects about Ryanair's business model and their ability, why they've been so successful in managing costs. And you can go back, and we've written about it many times in the past in Airline Weekly, and we'll surely touch on it in this upcoming issue as well. But that is just something to think about. And don't forget, as important and as instrumental as costs have been and cost management has been to Ryanair's success, they're also an extremely successful airline on the revenue side too. Let's not forget how skilled they are at ancillary revenues. And, this is not Walmart where, Walmart's famous for they might make, a penny on every item they sell, but they'll sell 1 trillion items and, make a huge profit. Ryanair will make some nice margins on a lot of their walk-up fares. For example, I think O'Leary, I have to go find the quote. I don't have it in front of me, but something about how, if you got your grandma's funeral to go to at the last minute, we're going to take the shirt off your back. So they're not, it's something. We'll have to go search that quote, but it is a, they do get high margin business, not on all their passengers for certain, but definitely on some of those late booking passengers, price insensitive passengers. So I think we covered Ryanair's situation pretty well. Bottom line is, looking real good going into the summer.
Ham and cheese paninis as well, Jay. Don't forget about the humble ham and cheese sandwich. Last year when I spoke to O'Leary,
and the bingo cards. I asked one of our colleagues, Jason flew Ryanair whenever it was this weekend, and I asked him if he purchased some bingo cards. He gave a negative on that, but I suggested that maybe we should start selling bingo cards at our Skift events.
Ooh, sure,
or maybe not.
Depends what the prize is. Okay. Thanks for that, Jay.
The prize is lunch with Gordon.
Oh God! Oh, I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. The prize is not. The prize is not having lunch with me. There we go. Okay, let's get into the break because there's lots to discuss in part 2 with Qatar Airways. But before that, just a very quick reminder: to send any questions or comments that you might have for us to podcasts at skift.com. That's podcast with an S at the end. And please don't forget to follow or subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening or watching. And if you are enjoying the show, please rate us 5 stars or leave us a positive review so we can continue to spread the word about the Airline Weekly Lounge. Don't go anywhere. We are discussing Qatar Airways after the break. Attention all passengers. Do you want a front row seat for the future of air travel? The Skift Idea Awards are back, and the Airlines and Airports category is where innovation takes flight. From next-gen passenger experiences to bold sustainability moves, we're celebrating the ideas transforming the future of aviation. Airline Weekly Lounge listeners get 50% off their first entry with the code AW50FORYOU. That's AW50FORYOU. Head to live.skift.com to start your submission today. Hello and welcome back to the Airline Weekly Lounge. I'm Gordon Smith, joined as usual by Jay Shabat. Part 1, we were discussing the latest updates from Ryanair. Part 2, we are discussing Qatar Airways. Jay, we knew that US President Donald Trump was going to be in the Middle East last week, and with that inevitably comes trade deals and various signings and bilateral agreements of sorts. We had 3 orders, I guess if you include the lessor deal as well, for the Maxes. From an airline point of view, in the traditional sense, we had Etihad, which is getting some more Boeing aircraft, and we've also got Qatar Airways. Qatar Airways was certainly the larger of the two for various reasons, not least just in terms of the sheer numbers. We have a firm order for 130 787s and 30 additional 777Xs, most likely the 777-9, and then there are options for up to an additional 50 aircraft, all wide body, so that would take you up to the magic 210. But even if those options aren't exercised, Jay, you're still looking at a very, very healthy 160. The deal is valued at 96 billion at the list prices, but as everyone who listens to this show knows, nobody actually pays the list price, especially on an order of that size. But we don't quite know the details, but certainly a very, very spicy list price there. And we should say that the engines, it's going to be GE Aerospace that are making those. Also, a US firm by no coincidence. Jay, were you surprised by the scale of the order last week?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's hard not to be, just. It's definitely an eye opener, when an airline orders that many planes. Now, you've been, covering this very closely. Did they say how long these planes will be delivered over? What time period? I have to imagine it's a very, very extended period. Yeah. There wasn't any specific timeline around that, but I think Stephanie Pope, the Boeing CEO, in her quote said that it was going to be into the next decade. So I certainly think when you're talking about that number, you're certainly looking towards the end of the 2020s and into the early 2030s. Jay, now Gordon, did you get my I Love Lucy reference in our issue this week? It's a little bit even before my time, but I some of you may have seen it, may have gotten it, or may have looked at it like what the heck is he talking about? But I was making a reference to the old famous I Love Lucy episode, the comedy show back in, what was it, the 50s, 60s, and there's a famous scene where Lucy, the main character, is working at a chocolate factory, and the chocolates are coming along the assembly line. She's got to pack them up as fast as she can. And the assembly line keeps getting faster and faster and faster, and eventually just can't handle it. And she's just, she's overwhelmed. That's Boeing right now, where they're just getting orders in remarkable numbers. I mean, the chocolates are just coming at Boeing just in incredible velocity. And they're just having trouble handling it all. And I think right now I may be a little bit behind, but as of recently, they were producing, was it 7 Dreamliners per month? And before COVID, that was, I don't know, was it double that? Don't quote me, I'm not sure, but it was, certainly higher. But even if you're doing, 14, 15 a month, that is, just think about how long it would take to fulfill an order of the size we're talking about with Qatar. Because remember, it's not just them. I mean, there's this whole bunch of other airlines that have ordered many 787s. And it's the same thing with the 737 MAX line also, where they're, they just have this extraordinary amount of demand, but they just can't produce them nearly as fast as customers want them. That is not the case for the 777X. Boeing wish it was a little bit more so the case for that plane, a little slower there. And of course, that's had, same thing with production problems. Customers want them, customers like Lufthansa and Emirates want that plane now, and Boeing can't get it for them. So that there is that story too. But the orders are, in that case, a little bit light on that plane. But certainly for the Dreamliner, Qatar Airways only adds to just what's huge backlog.
It's busy because they're focused all of their production now in South Carolina at North Charleston.
Yep, yeah, and that's interesting because they did close their line up in Washington State. All the Dreamliners are produced in South Carolina now. And, you wonder, I don't know what went into that decision, whether it was labor motivated or whatnot, but, it does make you wonder, do they kind of wish they had that second line? And maybe I assume they have some room to expand in South Carolina, so maybe there'll be an announcement on that, who knows? But yeah, certainly no shortage of demand for Boeing's Dreamliner.
Certainly not. And we did actually receive a little bit of extra color from Qatar Airways just in the past 24 hours, because the Qatar Airways CEO, Badr Mohammed Al-Mir, was speaking to CNN's Becky Anderson. She's based out of Abu Dhabi, looking after the bureau there. And here's the quote for you. Al-Mir said, quote, "At certain times, it was going towards Airbus, then it moved to Boeing, so it was a very tough competition between the four manufacturers, four including the engine makers, that is. When it was decided, it was a very, very, very close call, but it was in favor of Boeing." And Al-Mir also said in his CNN interview that various geopolitical elements are under consideration at Qatar Airways. They're looking to bolster their balance sheet in order to just navigate the various factors that you have to contend with when you are dealing with that part of the world. He said here, quote, "We are building in our budget year after year in case something goes wrong," globally that is, whether that's geopolitical, whether the fuel price is going up, or that can also be applied for the tariffs. Quote, "In our budget, there is an amount that is reserved to cover and protect us from these situations without having to pass on the extra cost to our passengers." And just specifically with regard to geopolitical things, Al-Mir said the airline was fairly well prepared for different scenarios. Here's another direct quote, quote, "The main problem that we have and we can't predict in this region is the geopolitical situation. When the wars take place, when attacks take place, when airspaces get closed and we are flying our aircraft. However, we have proven so many times that we are agile and we are resilient, and we will always have a plan B and plan C in case something happens." So interesting there, Jay, that even very, very well-backed airlines like Qatar Airways are considering the need for some sort of financial buffer within their annual budgets because there are just so many what we would maybe previously call black swan events that seem to have been hitting us almost non-stop for the past decade.
Oh, by the way, I was going to ask you this, Gordon, and you may have to take a few seconds to think about it, but what is the largest airline that you've never flown personally?
Wow, that's a good question.
Yeah, you may. Can you think of? You have to probably, maybe take a moment to. Well, I'll tell you what mine is while you take a moment to think about yours. And I think I was kind of going through this in my head this morning. I think it's Qatar Airways. I don't because I've never flown them, and I was kind of going through the big airlines in different parts of the world, and I was like, okay, I flew them, but I've never flown Qatar. No particular reason, but I've just never had the occasion to fly with them. Have you flown on them?
I've flown with them a number of times. Yeah, they're pretty good. When I was based out of the UK, they fly to Edinburgh, they fly Manchester, Birmingham. They used to fly to Cardiff before the pandemic, and not anymore. But even within London, they do Gatwick, and then also because of their relationship through IAG, British Airways, One World, well connected in, so you could get British Airways to Doha, for example, and then onwards with Qatar. Answer to your question, Jay, it would probably have to be one of the big Chinese carriers. So I've never flown with China Southern, for example. I've never flown with Air China. I have flown domestically within China, but not with either of those. So I'd say just in terms of a just sheer ASK or fleet basis, it would be one of the mainland Chinese carriers.
Okay, yes. I lived in China for 3 years, so I flew most of the Chinese carriers. And yeah, it seems like Qatar would be number one for me.
That was pretty hot this time of year. Maybe later in the year. I just want to close the episode, Jay, with a little bit, just getting back to Qatar Airways, on tariffs, because in that CNN interview, Almir revealed that the airline had negotiated a set price. He was asked by Becky Anderson, basically, are you worried that tariffs or the threat of tariffs could end up placing this huge order at a higher price than you were expecting? Not currency fluctuations directly, but tariff fluctuations, I should say. And he said basically no, because they have set a price to minimize the risk of any possible tariff-related fluctuations. Almir said, quote, "With the contract that we have signed with both Boeing and GE, we have fixed prices. The prices will not change regardless of tariffs. We have a contract. We've agreed on the prices, and we agreed on the maintenance prices. Both organizations will stick to the agreement that they have signed." So there you go, an indication, Jay, that airlines seemingly are willing and able to sign almost tariff-proof contracts.
All right, something that you have to definitely consider when you're negotiating aircraft contracts right now.
For sure, absolutely. Probably won't be the last, but very, very interesting insight there. Anything else to add on Qatar Airways, Jay, before we wrap up?
Nope. I look forward to reviewing their annual report that just came out and sharing that our thoughts with everyone in the issue this week. And so I think with that, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Okay. A quick reminder about the 2025 Skift Idea Awards. The deadline for those is June 13th. Various categories from across the travel industry, but there is a specific airlines and airports category. So if you're doing anything innovative around passenger experience, sustainability, loyalty, check it out. And Airline Weekly subscribers get 50% off their first entry with the code AW50FORYOU. That's AW50FORYOU. Go to live.skift.com for all the details, all the categories, and further information on the 2025 Skift Idea Awards. Okay, thank you for that, Jay. Really enjoyed our dual discussion. Thanks also to our producers, Monica, Doug, and Cole, and wherever you are in the world. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye for now. Whether you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, please make sure to subscribe, rate us 5 stars, or leave us a positive review. This really helps us get the word out about the Airline Weekly Lounge, so we can continue to bring you this podcast every week, absolutely free of charge. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the Skift channel and hit the notification bell to find out whenever a new video drops.